Richard, it's getting on to 10-2.
Yes.
So maybe we should start.
Yes.
Lots to talk about. And for our top story, here apparently are the 10 breakthrough technologies for 2021. That'll be interesting. In electro vehicles and so on, Elon Musk says Tesla will build a humanoid robot prototype by next year. In materials, high efficiency ultraviolet light can sterilize pathogens, including COVID-19. It could, for example, be used in ventilation to sterilize the air. In astronomy, here apparently are the 5 most impressive geological structures in the solar system. In environment, Sierra Leone is turning roadway vibrations into electricity. A brilliant teenager has used the rumbling road to generate electricity, providing free, clean energy to 150 households and 15 schools with over 9,000 students. Wow. In biology, a story about what slime knows, and it's amazing. For us, there are some key mental abilities that can actually improve during aging. And for our last story on health, apparently it's never too late to get really, really active. So that's what we'll discuss today. And now, Richard, tell us from our top story of the 10 breakthrough technologies for 2021.
This is interesting to me. And, this is a time where there are a lot of technical breakthroughs. So let's see what these guys thought. These were the editors of MIT Technology Review. And so MIT is in the middle of a lot of this technology. The first one is one that I think we all appreciate, whether we have gotten this or not. And this is the messenger RNA vaccines. And if you look at this cycle with COVID-19, we got lucky. The 2 most effective vaccines against the coronavirus are based on this messenger RNA technology. And they've been working on it for 20 years. But these were the first successful vaccines that reached the market, and they reached the market quickly. And this technology, they think, will transfer into medicine. We see already that there is an mRNA vaccine for HIV that is in testing. There's another one for malaria that is getting ready for testing. And you read about work they're doing with mRNA vaccines to help fight off cancer. So that's going to be a big deal. The next one they had was GPT-3, and this is the natural language computer that has learned to read and write like a human. And this is a big step in AI that can better understand and interact with the world. One minor problem is GPT-3 still does not actually understand what it's writing. It's trained with much information and puts it together based on the language training that it's done, but it doesn't really understand the meaning of what it's writing. So there will be a further advance coming in this. already with GPT-3, there are at least two interesting products that I've had offered to me via the internet that use GPT-3. One was a service that would just write articles for your website. Everybody, if you got things like this, you need to have copy, and GPT-3 would generate the copy for you. Another one is used to let you communicate with a dead one as long as you have a lot of emails or texts or stuff that you've written between them. So another one of the technology is one that I'm not familiar with because of my generation, and this is TikTok recommendation algorithms. TikTok is only 5 years old, but already it's been downloaded hundreds of millions of times and has hundreds of millions of users. And the reason why is because of its algorithm uh, lets people look at uh, new creators as well as well-known ones. And this trick of allowing new creators into the feed then means it gives visibility to a lot more artists and performers and people who are trying to be media stars than they had available before. So it's common in TikTok for somebody who is unknown to suddenly get popular and go from no activity to 1 million hits a day. The next technology is lithium metal batteries. The electric vehicle revolution that is coming is based on lithium ion batteries. And lithium ion batteries, though they are good and have come down uh, um, immensely in price over the last decade, they still have a range of only a few hundred miles, and to recharge them takes longer than people want to wait. And a Silicon Valley startup now has made a battery for EVs that can boost the range of EVs by 80% and can be rapidly recharged. It has so much interest now that they've made a deal with Volkswagen, and VW will feature this battery in their vehicles starting in 2025. There's another one that I'm skipping because it's less relevant, which was about data trust. But the next one was green hydrogen. And hydrogen is real promising as an energy source for this next generation, but the hydrogen that we have available now is mainly made from natural gas, and the process is dirty and energy intensive, not what you want for some green product. Green hydrogen, though, is based on using solar power to generate electricity and to use that electricity then to turn water into hydrogen and oxygen. Uh, Up until recently, that is this week, uh, the efficiencies were not very high with this process. In the last couple of days, there was an announcement that I read about a new catalyst that is much more efficient, and it makes green hydrogen easy to make, much easier, much lower in cost. And I think this new catalyst will make the green hydrogen revolution actually possible. The next article, the next thing I thought was of interest is hyper accurate positioning. GPS is in all of our lives now, but the GPS technology is accurate to 5 to 10 meters. And if you could have GPS that was accurate to a few centimeters, then this opens up new possibilities for things like delivery robots and even self-driving cars. If the cars actually knew where the cars near to them were, that makes it a lot easier to avoid them. And the main GPS system is getting an upgrade with 4 new satellites for the next generation that were launched in November, and more expected to go up through 2023. So GPS is getting a big upgrade. The next development that they thought was significant was remote everything. The COVID pandemic forced the world to go remote with things like we're doing here on Zoom, but specifically they're talking about the impact in healthcare and education. With education, for example, there is a company, Shazpak, which is an online tutoring company, and it has now 3.5 million users in 9 Asian countries. And then there in India, there's a company, Baiju, and it is the leading learning application in India, and it has 70 million users. So one thing that has become easier is remote education. Also, telehealth, remote medicine has become much more possible. And for example, in places like Uganda and other African countries, they've been able to use it to extend healthcare to millions of people who can't see doctors over the continent of Africa. So this remote era that we're in has been able to extend medical care and education in a number of places in the world. The next thing that they think is a big development is multi-skilled AI. Like with GPT-3, the AI systems that we are familiar with can do one thing and do the one thing really well. But humans, even human children, are smarter than that. We know how to figure out how the world around us works and then apply that general knowledge to new situations. AI can't do that yet. So what they're working on to try to move that way is with things that deal with sense systems. For example, there are AI now with computer vision and AI also that have audio recognition. What they're trying to do at this point is make an AI system that combines both so they can see something and then tell you about it. They think that would be an enormous step up. So that's what they thought were the 10 biggest things that are coming now. What about you? What do you think?
Any thoughts?
Well, I have a comment on the accurate GPS. I found by experience that the GPS is not better than the maps that are fed into it.
Sure.
And I had recently a case driving in Cincinnati where the road opened up in a Y, and I found that the map was wrong, so the GPS sent me left. and that was actually for traffic going the opposite way. So I had my first in my lifetime fine for driving the wrong way.
Oh, you got a ticket.
I got a ticket and I hit another car.
Oh, God. Okay. Yes.
So I don't need more accurate GPS. I need more accurate maps.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
for limited applications, of course, differential GPS gets us within a centimeter or two. But that takes setting up a separate GPS device.
Right. It takes ground stations to be able to get that accurate into the current system.
Right.
What they hope is GPS 3 will become accurate enough so you can get high accuracy, not as high as what you can get with the ground stations, but get nearly that high without the ground stations. So it's much easier to implement, lower in cost.
Mm-hmm.
And the battery and new battery technology is kind of important, I think. You know, I have been thinking for a long time, actually, that it would be awfully nice if we could fix up a home like mine here. And I think Norman has the same thing, and probably others have solar panels, and I got a generator system that in case the power goes down, we cut electricity. But it would be nice if we would have a battery rather than having a generator, because the generator is very noisy.
Right.
And it's expensive. And I thought if it would be cheap enough, we could do away with all these ugly lines that are everywhere and are kind of dangerous. And it would take care of the electric companies as well.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe old home then.
Yes.
Yeah. I've got a comment about AI, and they talk, like all the time they're talking about we've got AI that can do one thing really well, but it's not a generalist like a human being. And probably that is a good state of affairs, and we shouldn't try and change it, because that way we just get like a bunch of slaves who will do as their bid, and we can just supervise the whole thing.
So, Richard, if we want to move on to Elon Musk, he says Tesla will build a humanoid robot prototype by next year. Tell us about it.
Well, Tesla believes that his company has, or Musk thinks that Tesla has built great skills in making batteries, and also they make lots of robots, so they're good at programming robots. The robots they program now are for their automatic driving cars and for their manufacturing equipment. And he's trying to take those skills and use them in another area, which is humanoid robots. And he's going to call this humanoid robot the Tesla bot. And the Tesla bot, the first thing about it is that it's an example of Elon Musk's showmanship, because here he's announcing a product that they don't even have a prototype yet. So he's announcing it a little early. There's not going to be a product for a long time. And maybe this announcement is just PR, and it energizes backers, including employees and customers and investors. Elon Musk's comment about the robot is, quote, probably won't work. So that's not a very encouraging thing. he does say that we're good at sensors and batteries, and we'll probably have a prototype next year. At the announcement, they had what looks like a robot on stage with Tesla gyrating on the stage and moving around. The robot, however, was an actor wearing a robot costume. So that's how far they are from having the actual robot. And at one level, I think what Musk says is kind of frightening for the job market. He says if a humanoid robot works and can perform repetitive tasks that only humans can do today, that it has a chance to transform the world economy by driving labor costs down. Now, my experience in other areas is when you drive labor costs down, then often wages are driven down too, because it's not worth as much. So I'm not sure what the actual impact of the humanoid robots will be on our society. Musk, meanwhile, is just trying to get a boost in his PR with what would be called vaporware if it were software. We don't have a name yet for imaginary robotic programs, but if we keep up these kind of announcements, we'll have to figure out a label for it. What do you guys think?
Well, for one, I think Elon Musk should be taken quite serious because, you know, he founded, about 4 or 5 companies, one after the other. And when he founded SpaceX, there was nothing there, but he managed to get a contact from NASA. And within 4 years, he built a rocket that performed totally perfectly. And he took a ride in this thing himself to in fact show his competence. And that only took about 4 years. And I don't know how many engineers, but he has a way of both being very efficient in the work that he does and then picking the right people and getting the enthusiasm going. So if we can make a humanoid, he might be pushing it a little bit, but so if he doesn't do it in a year, he may do it in a year and a half. He will do it.
Certainly, Musk is a visionary, and one of the things that he has is deep pockets.
Well, he's made every penny himself. You know that, right?
Sure.
You read his story. I mean, he was 10 years old when he learned himself or taught himself how to program a computer and then developed a game he promptly sold. He was 12 and he sold it.
We should be making machines that perform specific tasks better than we do. Just general automation.
And so what Musk is doing is developing a generalized computer that can do lots of different things. Can wash the dishes and sweep the floor. I guess it can even take your dog for a walk.
And at the same time, Elon Musk backs universal basic income.
Uh-huh. Well,
Which
that's
is
good.
necessary.
We'll take care of the people who are thrown out of work because of the humanoid robots.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
An integrated solution.
Richard, what's this about light? High efficiency ultraviolet light that can sterilize pathogens, including COVID-19, which could be used, for example, in ventilation to sterilize the air. Tell us about that.
Well, one of the things that we know about this deep UV light is they use it now in things like operating theaters to keep the environment sterile. The problem they have is the current sources are mercury lamps, which are bulky and contain toxic chemicals and are expensive. And so they have been working on semiconductor light sources, and now they have a good one that is able to make high efficiency, deep UV light sources. And this is really the only alternative technology to replace these mercury lamps for water purification anyway. And the water purification is something that affects millions of people worldwide and impacts thousands of lives, and billions of dollars are spent every year on the purifying of water. And these UV lights are a very promising technology to kill viruses and bacteria. And these semiconductor-based ones now, this team has really advanced the maximum power and efficiency over what their previous versions were able to do. And it now, they have reached the highest values ever reported for deep UV LED operating at around 265 nanometers, which is the wavelength you need to kill these pathogens. And this will open up the use of these lights in systems like water systems around the world, and also I think air ventilation systems, because if you're spending all that money to move the air inside buildings around, you might as well make sure that you sterilize it on the way. So this will be a tool that helps us deal with our ongoing problem with COVID and other pathogens.
And airplanes and buses. Yeah.
I wonder, will nature respond by producing bugs that can't be killed by?
I don't know. You it's for every kind of technology, there seems to be a counter technology.
Well, Richard, moving on to astronomy, what's this about the solar system having impressive geological structures, and you're going to name 5 of them? What's that?
Well, this is from a geologist, and this is a geologist that says when we talk about amazing geological features, we often limit ourselves to those on Earth. But as a geologist, I think that's crazy. There are so many structures on other worlds that can excite and inspire, that can put processes on our own planet into perspective. And so here are a few, and I'll show you pictures as I go along. The first is what he calls the grandest canyon. And this is the Valle Marinas on Mars. And this canyon that you see in this photograph is 3,000 kilometers long, hundreds of kilometers wide, and up to 8 kilometers deep. It's so big that in places, if you stand on the rim on one side, you can't see the rim on the other side. It will have gone over the horizon. And this was created, they think, by volcanic action a long time ago, where this area began to bulge upward and then was widened and deepened by a series of catastrophic floods on Mars that climaxed about 3 billion years ago. So this is the results of floods on Mars 3 billion years ago. The next thing that he thinks is cool are fold mountains on Venus. And you can see here how these areas are just folded together and making mountains. These look familiar if you look, for example, at the Appalachians. You would see the same kind of pattern there. These fold mountains are from two plates on the crust hitting each other and displacing each other. And here we see the same processes on Venus. Another thing that he likes is what he calls blasted Mercury. And this is an area where it's one of the solar system's largest impact basin and an explosive volcano within it. And this is about 1,500 kilometers across, which is a pretty big basin. And it was formed by a major asteroid hitting Mercury about 3.5 billion years ago. And then soon after that, the area was flooded with lava. And then you see around these different areas where they think are explosive eruptions that blasted holes kilometers deep through the solidified lava and spread the lava around that area. And this particular feature does not fit their idea of Mercury. They thought Mercury, there would not be any gas within the planet because Mercury is so close to the sun that it would have been driven out by the heat, but it looks like that was not the case. And so we're discovering things on Mercury that are beyond our expectations. The next one I don't have a picture of is he says it's the tallest cliff. And this cliff is 7 kilometers high, which is a pretty tall cliff. It's the Verona Rupies on Uranus. It's on Uranus's small moon Miranda, and it's often described as the tallest cliff in the solar system. It was so tall that if you were on the top and it was just a straight drop down, it would take you 12 minutes to fall to the bottom if you fell off. It's not straight down, though. It's probably at a 45-degree angle, so you would just roll down. And then the last thing that he thinks is interesting is on Titan, and it's Titan's drowned coastline. This is a place on Titan where there was a large depression in Titan's water ice bedrock that has a sea of liquid methane. It's called Ligeria Mare. And if the Titan is the picture on the left, and you can see the land and the kind of craggy areas and the sea coming up. The picture on the right is in Arabia, in the Oman's Musaddam Peninsula. which is just south of the Straits of Hormuz. And there you see the same kind of structure there. And this indicates a couple of things on Earth that was due to action of plates colliding. And they don't know why it is on Titan. They think maybe it's the same thing, but they don't know enough about Titan to know. But whatever it is, it looks like processes that we see on the Earth. Also, we can find them on these other planets, and getting to know more about these other planets maybe will teach us more about the Earth.
Any thoughts?
I guess the Earth is the only planet that has 2/3 of its surface covered in liquid water. I think that the Martians and Mercurians would be kind of look at that and thinking that is an outstanding feature.
Now, when you say the only planet, you have to qualify that and say the only planet in the solar system, as they have found these extra the planets in other solar systems. They have found a bunch of them that look like they're all water planets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, Richard, if we want to move on to electricity, apparently Sierra Leone is turning roadway vibration into electricity, and a teenager is using that to generate electricity, providing free energy to many households and many schools. What's that about?
This is, to me, another story about what an individual person who is inspired and I believe has some education can do. This is Jeremiah Thoronka, and he says access to energy is a human right. We cannot function in an energy-less society, is his opinion. So where he lives in Sierra Leone, which is in outside of the cities, then only 6% of the people outside the cities have access to electricity. 6%. Otherwise, they rely on batteries or kerosene or, I'm sure, wood. And if you have not experienced what this is like, then it's hard for us civilized people to really realize what a difference this makes in day-to-day life. And anyway, when Jeremiah was 17, then he founded a company, Optim Energy, and this company is a startup that harnesses kinetic energy in objects in motion and converts it to emissions-free electricity. And here he developed himself the device that is at the base of this, and this device can be installed underneath busy roads where it generates electricity from the vibrations of cars and even pedestrians. And since he has installed this now, this early installation provides free, clean energy to 150 households and 15 schools that have over 9,000 students. He says, the sun is not always shining, but people are always moving. Now, what an amazing kid, I think. And though they don't talk about it in this story, I think this story is also about the impact of basic levels of education on populations that haven't had it. The thing that had to give him the tools to be able to have these ideas and this imagination and to figure out how to do it was education moving into the rural areas of Sierra Leone. So I think of this as also a product of the broadening of education in the world.
Any thoughts?
I wonder how it works, actually. I mean, how do you have any idea?
Don't have any idea. I know everything about it. I know I already told you.
It's a wonderful idea from a young person. And I wonder if that could be expanded to be used, for example, on train or on bridges, other places in the world with a lot of vibration.
I think there are a lot of places where this is applicable.
Yeah.
Especially the cobbled streets of Ahihic.
That's right.
Or under the topes?
Yeah.
Hey, that's right. So we could use the topes for something good.
Richard, moving along to biology. What's this about slime knowing a lot that's so amazing?
Well, I have to say, until I read this story, I didn't know much about slime, except that it was slimy. And particularly, they're talking about something that, though they call it slime mold, it's not really a mold. It's not really a fungus, but it's some other classification of life that's called myxomycete. And this is a small understudied class of creatures that appear in yards and gardens and all over the place as strange technicolor blobs. And like fungi, myxomycetes begin their life as spores, but there it is very different. When the myxomycete spore germinates, an amoeba comes out, and the amoeba is consuming bacteria and yeast and algae and occasionally dividing to clone and multiply itself. And when the amoeba finds another amoeba with whom it's genetically compatible, the two fuse, joining chromosomes and nuclei, and the newly fused nucleus begins dividing and redividing, growing ever larger until at the end of its life, it forms into a fruiting body that might be sponge-like or a hardened calcium deposit or hundreds of rust-colored stalks. And this is an irreversible state. And from there, it divides itself into countless spores. To give you an idea, I have pictures of a few of these fruiting bodies, or I had them, except I hit the wrong thing. Let me go through a process that is not as efficient as I walk because I closed something. Okay, here are some of these fruiting bodies. Look at this. This looks like hearts. excuse me. This is another one. We have the hearts again. Then we have the things that look kind of like grapes hanging down. These are all, of course, tiny. Here's another one that has these things hanging down. Here's another one that looks like a web. And so they make real interesting structures, but that's not all the story is. This taxonomic group only contains less than 1,000 individual species, so it's one of the smallest on the planet. And as I say, these exist everywhere on every continent in almost every environment where people have looked for them on the continent. And these myxomites have a different life. Most of the time, they only exist as a single cell in which the cytoplasm always flows, and it flows out to the extremities and back to the center. And when a group of these encounters something like oatmeal in one example, they pulsate more quickly, so you know they found it. And if it finds something it doesn't like, it pulsates more slowly and moves away. In an experiment, scientists blasted a specimen with cold air at regular intervals, and they found that it learned to expect the blast and would retract in anticipation. Now remember, these are single cell critters without nervous systems, without brains, but here they could learn to expect the cold air and retract, anticipating them. It could also solve mazes, searching for foods it likes, like an oat flake, and later can recall the path it took. So they don't have nervous systems or minds, but they have memory. How can you do that? How can you do that? And another thing that is different is the slime moles can grow indefinitely in its plasmoidal state. This is where it's spreading around. It can get as big as a doormat, so you can get a lot of them together. And as long as it has an adequate food supply and environment, then it doesn't age and it doesn't die. So that's kind of different than most other things. And so here you have creatures that begin life as a microscopic amoeba and ends it as a vibrant splotch that produces spores. And for all the time in between, it's a single cell. It can grow as large as a bath mat, like I say. It has no brain, no sense of sight or smell, but can solve mazes and learn pattern and keep time. So they had trouble until the days of genetic biology, even figuring out what these things were and where they fit in the taxonomy systems. Now they believe, based on this analysis, that they're probably 2 billion years old. That's 2B with a B, billion with a B, which would make them hundreds of million years older than plants. And they believe these were one of the first critters to come out of the ocean onto the land. And this was at a time when the only land species were giant mats of bacteria. Since these guys eat bacteria, it was probably a good environment for them. And they, a few years ago, they found a piece of amber that had within it a fossilized slime mold dating from about 100 million years ago. And when they examined it, it looks indistinguishable from that same kind of slime mold now. So it hasn't evolved or changed in the last 100 million years. Maybe it's the dominant species on the earth. I don't know. It's been around a lot longer than we have. And after humans are extinct, the slime molds will go on. And again, it's made biologists really wonder about their system of classifying life and all of these questions. There are a lot of problems dealing with it or unknowns in dealing with it. One of the things with a lot of species that they're doing is they're trying to take a census of them and be able to look to see if the population are increasing or decreasing. And that's hard to do with slime molds. If you take a slime mold and cut it into pieces, for example, if the piece goes off and has different experiences than the main piece and then comes back and rejoins them together, then the new combined slime mold has the skills that the separate piece learned when it was out on its own. And because they can't figure out what an individual slime mold is it the amoeba? Is it the structure that a bunch of amoebas make? So since they can't figure out what an individual is, then they can't figure out how in the heck to count these things. And so as I think of the evolutionary tree, now, by the way, they say, the biologists say it's not an evolutionary tree. It's a lot more like an evolutionary web. And anyway, so this questions a lot of ideas that biologists have about what is life and what is the origin and evolution of life on this planet.
Any
So that's
thoughts?
your slime mold.
Any thoughts?
Well, the name Trump keeps coming into my mind.
Well, Richard, moving on to us. What are these key mental abilities that you and I can have that will improve as we get older and older?
Well, I think this is exciting for me, and I think for everyone who is here today. It's long been believed that advancing age leads to broad declines in our mental abilities. And new research from Georgetown University Medical Center offers good news that counters this view. They have studied brain networks and how brain networks work in age, and have found two key brain networks which seem pretty important. One of them allows us to attend to and absorb new information, and the other one allows us to focus on what is important in any given situation. And these two actually improve in older individuals, and it improves functions that are pretty critical, such as memory, decision making, self-control, language, and reading. And those are functions that instead of deteriorating, improve. And they think that what they have found is the gains from this improvement are large enough to outweigh the underlying decline in the neural systems, for the number of brain cells you have continues to reduce each year after 60. And they think also that it may be possible to deliberately improve these skills as protection against brain decline and an improvement in healthy aging. And I suspect doing things like we're doing here, one of those functions had to do with your ability to absorb new information. And what we do for an hour or so every week is provide you with new information to absorb. And what we're doing is helping your brain overcome the natural aging and continue to get better as you get older. So how about that? It's another reason to watch Hot Science.
Any thoughts?
We're all grateful to you, Richard.
Well, I'm grateful to you because the way I keep myself going and learning new stuff is by getting ready for these sessions every week.
Mhm.
I think this is the most encouraging thing. I'm sorry. This is the most encouraging story that I've seen in a long time. One of the things is that they say that these two areas are, one of the reasons they work better is because they improve with practice. And that's
Right.
an important thing in terms of education, because
Yes.
then we should be starting earlier and earlier when people are kids to get them to exercise these parts of their brains.
Right.
Mhm.
And so I don't know how we encourage children's natural curiosity, but I suspect that would feed directly into this. I think one of the ways we might encourage them is when some of the kids are being disruptive in the classroom, it's because they're bored and their mind wants something else. And instead of slapping them down, maybe we have to figure out ways to encourage them.
Mhm.
I agree.
Well, Richard, if that's saying that we should focus on people when they're young, the next story says that may be the case, but it's never too late to get active. Tell me about that.
Now, this is physically active, not mentally active, but it says another story that I think is a good, encouraging story. And this was based on a study of more than 30,000 heart patients. So it's got a broad enough base where it should be generally applicable. And what it shows is that becoming active later in life can be nearly as beneficial to survival as continued activity. So they took these 30,000 people and divided them into 4 groups according to their activity levels. And then what they found is that compared to patients who were inactive over time, the risk of all-cause death was 50% lower in those who had been active all their life. And for those who were inactive, but who became active later in life, and I think I'm one of those, it was 45% lower instead of 50% lower. So the numbers are not quite as good, but it's still pretty good. And this compares with 20% better for those who had been active early in their life, but became inactive later in the life. So the results show that continuing an active lifestyle over the years is associated with the greatest longevity. Take a bow, Fred. And then, however, patients with heart disease can overcome prior years' inactivity and obtain substantial survival benefits by taking up exercise later in life. So it's not too late to get moving.
Any thoughts?
I'm a great believer in that. All you have to do is go for a walk. You should spend at least an hour walking every day. And it needn't be tedious. Just kind of, instead of getting the car to go for some groceries, go for a walk and bring them back. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, Richard, we don't seem to have many takers on that. So maybe
We're all going to leave and go out and go for a walk.
Okay, that's good. Well, very good. And we'll see you next week, and continue to tune in and keep your brains growing.
Thanks a lot, Richard. And thanks to everyone else. Bye for now.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Adios.
Thanks, Richard.
Thanks, Fred.